A gangland murder in Belfast of the underworld's most wanted man. Hitman Robbie Lawler had countless enemies, but who ordered his death? This month, Crime World presents Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler, a podcast series that will bring you right into the black heart of organised crime. Based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, we'll follow a bloody trail into the underworld and to the narco-style murder and dismemberment of teenager Cian Mulready Woods, which would set in motion the complex plot to take out Lawler. Listen as we lift the lid on the inner workings of Ireland's gangland, revealing a cast of ruthless characters who take centre stage for their place in this real-life double-cross thriller. Crime World presents Double Cross, coming soon to all podcast platforms. Web of Betrayal by me, Nicola Tallant, is now available on Audible and in all good bookstores. Clodagh, there was a total of 8 witnesses today that gave evidence at the trial of Conor McGregor and his friend James Lawrence, who've both been accused by Nikita Hand of rape. Both have denied that and said they had consensual sex with her. It's a civil case happening in the High Court in Dublin. But the most, I suppose, high profile of these witnesses was Conor McGregor himself. So we're going to start with him and then we'll go back to what happened from the beginning of the day. So Conor McGregor got into the witness stand some point after lunch.
Yes, the first thing he did was explain why he wasn't there this morning. So he had told the court that he wasn't there because he had a stomach upset. So then when he got into he was sworn in, of course, and he was questioned initially by his senior counsel. So Remy Farrell began the questioning. We have a set of questions from him. And then, of course, it moves over to Nikita Hand's legal team who then have questions. So we'll go through the first part, then we'll move on to onto their ones.
Yeah.
So when asked how he knew Nikita Hand, he said that they were both in the same area. They kind of ran in the same circles. He didn't know her. He just knew of her. He said that Nikita had followed him on Instagram and sometimes she would send him messages, and at one point he responded to one of these messages. When asked why she made contact with him in 2018, he said that he'd put up a photograph and she had gave me a compliment of some sort and I said thank you. So that prompted the initiation of that conversation on the 8th of December 2018. When asked if he was, does he use social media for his job? Does he tweet? Does he use Instagram? He said that it was modern day life, that part of modern day life, people engage with you online and you engage back. So he was then asked to explain how social media works. And he said, if somebody follows you, they can see your activity and send you messages. If you follow them back, it can come through into your message inbox. And if not, it can go into another inbox. He said that at the time he didn't follow Nikita on Instagram and her page was private. But he said that he knew of her. And when the message came through, he replied to it. He said that this message again was a compliment. It was a nice message. He said, I know her as a friendly girl, and began chatting online through that. So then Conor McGregor begins talking through his day. It was Saturday, the 8th of December, 2018. He said he would have trained that day. He was then at home, resting in his home. And at the time, he said he lived in the K Club. And he became aware of an event that was taking place at District 8 in Dublin. He said, I thought that would be perfect. It was a Saturday, so he was resting. He decided then he would jump in the car and went towards District 8. He was asked if he was driving himself, and he said, I would drive myself, but I was planning on having a few drinks that night. So he took his driver because he has security at his home. He said, if you go out, he explained, if you go out to a busy place, he said, particularly on a Saturday night, if there's alcohol, it can get intense. And when asked where this District 8 was, he said it was in the old Tivoli. Now, he was asked on this occasion if he went out with 2 cars or 1 car, and he said he would have left with 1 car, and he said, I assume at some point his security would have rang somebody else, and then he was sure at that point another car would have came along to go with them. Asked why would he need 2 cars when it was just him, he said, he'd meet friends. He didn't really know what might happen. There was alcohol involved. He was asked what kind of event he was going to in District 8, and he said it was a DJ set. He met there with James Lawrence, who is his friend, who is the co-defendant in this case, and a few of us friends from his martial arts gym. He said when he got there, the maker of the event, he said, invited him on stage. He took a picture on stage with the crowd in the background and he posted this to his public Instagram account. He said at this point, Miss Hand responded privately to him and sent a pic of herself in a dress that evening. And he said it was slightly provocative. She asked where I was and let me know where she was. And he said it was a nice picture. I liked it. He's then asked, was he still in District 8 at this point? And he said, yeah, he got there late enough. It was a late night venue. He got there around 11 and left around 1. He'd had a couple of drinks there. He was asked then, did he have anything other than alcohol while in the venue? And he said, no. When he left the venue then, he was asked, what did he do? And he said he drove around for a while and decided to go to Crystal nightclub. He said you kind of pick people up as you go along. And he said he arrived at Crystal at around 2 a.m. He said that they gave him a table. He said it was a busy Saturday night. It was during the Christmas period. He said he had a table that was kind of tucked away and he ordered rounds of drink for the table. He was then asked if there was anything other than drink taken. And he said as the evening went on, there was cocaine produced. He said he left that nightclub at around 6 or 7 a.m. He also made the comment that he doesn't know how the nightclub has a license to stay open that late. When asked where did he go after that, he said when everyone left, everyone's asking you where's the after party. There's a multitude of people around. Somebody said he knew, somebody said he met there at the nightclub, and so they kind of ended up driving around. Then it's put to him that he arrived at the salon and it was just him in the car at that stage. And he said, yeah, when you're driving around, there was people trying to get something going. At the time, he had arranged a room, he said, but he wasn't sure if he wanted to bring people back. And he didn't really let people know that he had this room booked. He said people began to disperse at their own accord. He said he requested a room to be booked for him. He told his security to do so. He said that they would usually ring around a couple of hotels, but they were in the city centre. So it ended up that they ended up out at the Beacon in Sandyford. He was then asked if James was with him when he left Crystal nightclub, and he said he was. He couldn't remember if he dispersed at his own accord or if he had been dropped home by Conor or his driver. He said, I either dropped him off or he'd jumped out along the way. He said throughout the evening, since the picture he'd put up on Instagram, there was a slew of messages coming through to him from Nikita saying they were at the Goat, it was their Christmas party, saying, come out to us. It then became, come and get us, and things of that nature is what he said. Then he was asked if he ended up at the Goat at the time that Miss Hand and Miss Keeley were out there at 10:15 a.m. This is obviously when they get in his car, and he says, and he's asked, what did they do? And he said, at this point, he didn't know what to do himself when they got into the car. He said, I thought I was going to their party. We were on the phone joking about me getting my hair done because, of course, it was a salon that they were in at the time where Nikita Hand and Danielle Keeley worked. He said they got into the car and he wanted to get to know what the vibe was like. So there was a lot of driving around. He said, I like driving around the back of the car. It's nice and relaxing to be driven around. He said it wasn't really much driving around for hours as in the early morning during the Christmas period. He said it wasn't that much driving when you think about the route that they drove. He was then asked if he remembered having a disagreement in the car with Danielle Keeley. And we had heard in evidence it was put to her earlier on in the day, did she have a disagreement with Conor McGregor in the car? And she says, no, I don't remember. So at this point, we hear a little bit more about what this alleged disagreement was about. So Conor McGregor said that when Nikita got into the car, she was, quote, very bombastic and very energetic. He said, I felt myself going back against the window in the back seat of the car. So he was in the back seat of the car behind the passenger seat. Danielle was then behind the driver's seat, and Nikita Hand was in the middle. And they're all in the back seat of the car. Obviously the driver in the front, nobody in the front passenger seat. He said, Danielle thought I was showing off my watch. I think she thought I was being a show off. It wasn't really a disagreement. She just thought I was showing off. And his legal counsel put to him, I don't want to, disrespect you, but could it be the case that you were showing off? And he said he didn't believe so. Conor McGregor went on to describe that he didn't know the two ladies. He thought he was going to their party, but they got into his car. At this point, he was kind of thinking, I might go home. I might say, it's nice to meet you. I'll see you again. But then they drove off. They went to James Lawrence's house at one stage, and he was asked how he knew James Lawrence. So he said, I know him the same way I know Nikita. kind of just through other people. But when they were younger, they began to bond over a video game called Call of Duty. So he said, I'd go over to his house and play the game. So they kind of became friends in their late teen years. And Conor McGregor agreed that he would be a regular visitor to James Lawrence's home. He said that he had this routine at one point where he would drop his girlfriend. He said, I dropped my fiance off, and then he corrected himself. No, she was my girlfriend at the time. At work, she was working in Crumlin. He would go to SBG, the Straight Blast gym, where he was training at the time. And afterwards, he'd go to James's house. He'd go back and collect his girlfriend at the time, Dee, from work. Then he'd go back to the gym where he taught a boxer size class. So he was asked, did he meet up with James Lawrence often as an adult? And he said he did. And then he was asked, what made you go to Mr. Lawrence's house on that particular morning? And he said he had 2 boisterous ladies full of energy and he needed to level it out. That's what they wished for, a party. And he also said that Nikita knew of James. So he decided to go to his house. Was asked, did he go driving around beeping? And he said no. He was asked, what happened when you got to James? He said he got there, he went up to James's bedroom. He told him there was 2 lovely ladies to look out the window. They're asking for him. So I got him to join on board reluctantly. He was then asked, did he have any shoes on? And he said he didn't. He doesn't know why he had no shoes on though, because Conor McGregor said he wasn't rushing him to get out of the house or anything to that effect. Then he was asked when they were in the car. So there's 4 of them then in the car at this point. And he was asked, where did they go? And he said, at this point, people knew that I had that room. People wanted to go back to the room. He said, I wasn't sure if he wanted people to go back to that room. He said, I didn't want people to wreck my room. I'd go asleep and I'd wake up in a wrecked room. He said they were having a lot of fun in the car. So he said, we'll go and we'll check out this hotel. And he said he beckoned his driver. He said, I was requested to get people to party with, get a hotel, get drink. People were asking things and I was obliging, he said. It was then, he said he imagined that the security guards went to the reception to get the key to check into the room. He said at this point, the mood was very fun, very playful, very happy and full of energy. He was asked what he seen when he looked out the window of the Beacon Hotel, and he said that he would see, because the Beacon Hotel is in the foothill of the Dublin Mountains, he said you see the mountains and some of the M50. And he was asked at this point, where was the security guards, your driver? And he said that they were in the room. They went in, they checked out the room, and then they would have been beckoned to get alcohol. And asked if they were in a separate room. He said, yeah, they were in a separate room. I wouldn't have them in my room among the party. They're there to assist. Then they began looking at photographs of these doors. So we heard actually an evidence from a Garda who was on the stand, the first witness on the stand for Conor McGregor's legal team. This morning, yeah. And he was a Garda, and he said that the Penthouse was 2 rooms, so room 715 and room 717 together. So you could rent them out separate, book them separately. Or if you book them together, they kind of take one of the beds out and put a couch or something into the other room. So this is the adjoining door that we've heard so much about. So there's the bedroom where Conor McGregor is with Nikita and the bath. And then there's a sitting room where Danielle was with James. So there was a conversation about that door, about whether or not it was open. And Conor McGregor said the door was open at all times. When he was asked if he could close the door, he said, I don't believe so. Then they started to speak about...
The Garda earlier had said what about the door?
Well, this is Conor McGregor was asked if he could close the door, and he said it was open at all times, and Conor McGregor didn't believe he could open the door. But earlier on, the Garda had said he was not sure. While he had been given 2 keys, you could see that when you closed over the door, you could remove the key and the bottom lock would still stay out even if you took the key out. But he couldn't determine whether or not the door, he couldn't say for certain whether or not the door could or could not be closed.
Okay.
And Conor McGregor says he believes that that the door couldn't. He doesn't believe that it could be closed. So then we start looking at this bath, which is something that we've heard a lot about. You know, in Nikita Hand's testimony, she said that there was this bath in the room, and this bath was the key reason she believed she was in a different hotel in the city centre.
The Morgan Hotel.
The Morgan Hotel, yes. So Conor McGregor then took the evidence book with the photographs. He had a look in those, and he was asked then to talk about the bath. So he said when they went in, they were all looking around the room, and Nikita jumped into the bath. He said it was on an elevated step of stone. she jumped into the bath at the elevated height. He said, I thought she probably hurt herself. She tried to play it off a bit by pretending to swim, but she was in her clothes and her high heel shoes. It was strange, but that was it, is what he said. Then we move into the alcohol. So he's asked, what alcohol was ordered, and he said there was vodka mixtures, beers, Bacardi. He said there was Bacardi because Nikita loves Bacardi. When asked if there was any more entertainment, he said that they had put Bluetooth music onto the TV. You didn't want to be too loud in the hotel. And he said there was a bit of music, a bit of chat. They were getting to know each other. And then he says that the party was in full swing. Himself and Nikita were getting close. We were kissing, touching in the penthouse, getting closer. He said there was a bit of a buzz. They were kissing. I went into the bathroom and Nikita followed me in. He was then asked if he used the toilet, and he said, I'm not 100% certain, but I had my zip open, so I believe I did. He then said when he was in the bathroom, Nikita was in and out. He said she was, quote, very boisterous, energetic, enthusiastic. He said, as I was walking out of the bathroom, they were kissing. And he said at this point, it was a lot more passionate. And they began to take it from there. So when he asked what he meant by take it from there, he said, she performed oral sex on me at that moment. That time we were both clothed. He said, I had my trousers down. And then he took off his shoes. He said James was 3 feet away on the sofa bed in the other room. He said the door was open also. It was then said to the court, it might be unusual that to have engage in sexual activity with the door open. But Conor said the whole thing was quite unusual. He said it wasn't like the open door. There was no talk of closing the door. He couldn't see the sofa bed in his peripheral vision. It was wrapped around. So he said things as well progressed very quickly with Nikita. He said we engaged in fully consensual sex. We began in the missionary position, to at which point he was told, there's no presumptions here about what that means, to which the judge interjects and says the jury aren't from Mars. He said, yeah, I was on top of her. It was enthusiastic and it was athletic. She had her legs on my shoulders. He said, another time I'm upright, her knees were on my chest, my hands were on her thighs. She got on top of me. We went and did many positions during this. And he said, we could also hear James having sex, and we had a bit of banter about that. Conor then said Nikita jumped up and threw her head out the door and said, you dirty bastard, licking her out or something like that. It was all fun, good-hearted and happy. He was then asked if he ejaculated, to which he said he did. He was asked did he feel or notice a tampon, and he said it was broad daylight. There was no tampon, not that I could see or feel, and he could see no blood. When asked how he woke up, he said that he woke up with Nikita and James holding a leg in each hand. He came to and woke up. He said he was in a deep sleep. Nikita then he says, propositioned her again and began performing oral sex. He said, we had sex again, this time with her solely on top of me. When asked when this sexual encounter occurred, he said it was about an hour before they left that they had sex for a second time. He said, asked them, when did he decide to leave? And he said, I decided to leave when I woke up. And he was asked, do you remember where Nikita was at that stage? And he said, yes, Nikita had woken me up because she was in the bedroom. And Danielle was back out in the sitting room with James. He said Nikita was doing a little dance. She wanted to keep the party going, but he had nothing left. He said Danielle needed a lift home. She lived in Naas. He said, I recall something around her mother or father being worried about her. So he left in the car. He said, I left a car there for them as well. I left the room and the card was left on the room so they could have more drink, whatever they wanted. He said that he initially said no to dropping Danielle home, but eventually heard her out and decided she was a nice girl, so would bring her home. He got into the car and Nikita was keeping the door open. He said that she was pulling out of his arm saying, stay, stay. And he said, I looked at them all and said, I'm going. And then he said, I beckoned my driver to leave. So then he's asked, did he see any bruising on Nikita? He said no. When asked if she was distressed, he said there was not an iota of distress seen. In the bedroom, in the lift, he said he didn't see anything like that. He said that the mood was identical throughout the evening. Then he was asked, where'd you go from there? So he said that Danielle lived in Salins or Naas or something. He then dropped her home. It was put to him that in the following days, there was a lot of chatter about a sports star. You may have been named. Do you remember that? And he said, yes. He said, how did you feel? His senior counsel said, how did you feel about that? And he said, it's not my character. I was shocked shocked. It was one of the most scariest things I've been through in my life. He said, I wanted to get the best advice and I wanted to get everything correct and dial it in. And then at this point, there is a letter from his solicitor. It's not given in as an exhibit to the jury, but it's just confirmed in evidence that there was a letter sent from his solicitor to the Gardaí on the 13th of December 2018 requesting the Gardaí go to the Beacon Hotel and preserve the CCTV.
Right.
So that brings his legal counsel's examination and questioning of him on the stand to a close.
Okay. So did he undergo cross-examination from Nikita's legal team, or did that finish it for the day?
No, so then he went under cross-examination from Nikita Hand's legal team. So Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand's legal team said, you just said your reaction was to show them everything you had. Why didn't you give them your phone? To which McGregor said that they didn't ask. And he said, are you sure?
This is the police he's talking about?
No, this is the Gardaí that they're talking about. And he said he's sure that they didn't ask. And he was asked, why didn't you offer it? To which he said he was taking advice from his solicitor. It was then put to him, why was he a person who was anxious to persist not handing over the phone? And he said the phone wasn't present. There was nothing on the phone. He said, I'm upset over that. I want every shred of evidence put before the court. He then made an off-the-cuff remark about something that he hadn't been asked about. He said something along the lines of, I want the taxi man's statement. She was frolicking, sucking his fucking dick. And at this point, he was told, Mr. McGregor, restrain yourself. He was then asked by Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand's legal team if he would give over the phone now. And he said, it's a different phone, but if you want it, pal, you can have it. Then cross-examination moved on to the octagon, which is, he was asked, what's an octagon? And Mr. McGregor said, it's a shape. And Nikita Hand's legal team said it's how they describe a ring in your sport. It's an 8-sided cage in which a fight takes place. And he said, yes. And he was asked, to stop a match, you tap out. And he said, yes. And at this point, you concede the fight. And he agreed. He said, let's go back to the October 2018. Not long before this events, you did fight a match on the 6th of October, 2 months earlier in Las Vegas. And he agreed. And he said this was with a Habib. And then he pronounced his surname. He asked, did I make a terrible mess of that? To which Conor McGregor laughed and said, yes, good lad. He was asked if it was one of the most important matches of his career. And he said, no. He said, he was put to him that he was beaten in the 4th round and how that was so. And he said it was due to a neck crank. And he was asked, was that a type of headlock? And Conor McGregor said, yes, to an untrained eye. He said, if there was a headlock and you couldn't breathe, if you didn't tap out, you'd die. And he said, well, I wouldn't have died because the referee would have stopped it before I would have gotten to that stage. And he was asked, well, was it distressing? And he said, no. So it was then put to him that my client says you put her in a headlock. And Conor McGregor replied, your client is full of lies. Everything is a lie. It was then put to him that Emer Brennan recounts Nikita Hand describing being put in an arm block by him. And he said, just okay, with the sort of inflection with a question mark. She also says that after this, you said to her, you now know how I felt in the octagon when I tapped 3 times. And Conor McGregor replied, how can anyone believe that? It's not in my nature. It's a full-blown lie among many lies. It was then put to him, you're saying that she's so devious, she made up a lie. And he said, the judge then said, you're asking the witness to speculate, to which Mr. Gordon said, okay, well, his client knew nothing about the game, the rules of the game, the rules of MMA. And Conor McGregor said, well, your client was actually in Las Vegas in 2015 for my match. And he said, well, she wasn't at the match. She was just in Vegas. And he said, it's a lie. Conor McGregor said, it's a lie. It's almost a fantasy. It feels like a fantasy. It was then put to him that he'd heard the medical evidence, to which he agreed. It was put to him then that she was found to have bruising on her neck. And Conor McGregor replied, I heard the Satu guy say it was consistent with a love bite. And then it was put to him that the doctor who was on the stand yesterday, who examined her neck, I believe 9 days after the alleged incident, he asked if she had heard his evidence, and he agreed. You then heard the recording of her partner at home, and Conor McGregor said, yeah, her then partner. And it was then put to him that she refers to the fact that she's hoarse in the voice note. And he said, she also refers to the fact she got the better of me. He recorded her secretly. I find that fascinating. And I didn't feel like her voice was hoarse. Did you? It was then asked him, where do you think she got the bruising? And he said, well, it was from the bath, but also she'd been out for 3 days. It was then put to him that he was suggesting his client got bruises from swan diving, to which Conor McGregor said, I'll tell you where she didn't get them from. Me, is what he replied with. He then said, I'd say the sex was athletic, it was physical, it was in a multitude of positions. In some, I had my hands on her hips, her buttocks, and at no time did I go near her neck or arms, and at no time did she bite me, and at no time did I bite her. It was then put to him that he was saying that he didn't cause the bruises, and he says the sex was not rough, it was physical. And it was then asked again of him, so you didn't cause any of the bruises? And he said, as far as I'm aware. It was then put to him, of course, in various interviews with the Gardaí. He went to the Garda station and gave a statement. And then on the 18th of January at 7 a.m, after his interview with the Gardaí, he returned to the station with a solicitor, Aoife, and she said at this point that he wanted to add something to the statement. So he read out a prepared statement to the Gardaí, and he was asked, does he remember this? And he said, I'm not sure. And he said, what are you not sure about? And Conor McGregor replied, he can't remember. He wasn't sure if it had been a prepared statement or not. So the statement is presented to him. Again, it's not entered into evidence. It's just given to him so we can confirm whether or not this was the statement that was read to the Gardaí, the prepared statement. At this point, this is what was read out to him that was on that prepared statement. It was an amendment. It was something he wanted to add. So he added, I'd like to add that Nikita never said no or stop or anything like that. She didn't do anything to say she wasn't enjoying herself. I didn't have any chokehold, make any comment about the octagon. She didn't tell me she was wearing a tampon. And then it was put to him that the photographs were shocking. And are you sure she didn't have sex with somebody else?
The photographs of her
body,
injuries,
her injury. So he then asked him to look at the photographs of the injuries to Miss Hand's body. So these were various photographs that were taken by the Gardaí the morning after her visit to the Satu clinic. And he said, Mr. Gordon put to him that in the statement, you said you didn't cause any of these. Was that his reaction to see? And his reaction to seeing the photographs for the first time was, I am shocked by those photographs. And Conor McGregor responded to this on the witness stand and said, I was shocked. I didn't cause them. It was only after piecing the evening together. He said the 3 days she was out across multiple parties. You went to Airfield, the Salon, the Beacon. He was shocked. And he said his initial reaction to those photographs was shock. It was then put to him that from the period of the event on December 9th to January 19th, which is when he gave the statement to Gardaí that he had been in touch with a solicitor, and he agreed he was. It was then put to him that he went back to the station and made a statement after he consulted with his solicitor, after what he had seen. So after he'd seen these photographs, and he said, yes, he said, my life is on the line here. I saw the images and I took legal advice. It was then put to him that there was a photograph of Nikita's right breast and it was clear that something had scraped it, and he agreed. It was then put to him that it had been scraped by the strap of a watch, to which McGregor said, okay. If you put this watch, Mr. Gordon put to him, if you put this watch, Nikita Hand's watch, which we seen was in court earlier in the trial, he said if you put that to her breast, it looked like a good match. And Conor McGregor just said, okay. It was then put to him that during the evening, she was pressed down to such an extent that it scraped her. And he said, it wasn't, not by me. When asked who, he said, I don't know, it wasn't me. He was then asked, would you agree it looks like a graze from a strap? And he said, no, I think it looks like a graze from a Velcro strap. It was then put to him that the scratch is entirely and only consistent with putting that watch down and scraping her. To which he said he disagrees. He then went on to describe the atmosphere of the day as being fun, friendly, happy and energetic. It was then put to him that the woman in the ambulance, and Ethna Scully, who we heard from yesterday, she said it was one of the worst cases of bruising she'd ever seen in her career. And he was asked, is it his worst case of bruising he's ever seen in his career? To which he disagreed. He said, it's an interesting comment, but also you're talking 3 days out, Saturday, and then you're in the ambulance. He said it's a long time to still be up. He's then asked if they're the worst scrapes or bruises he's ever seen on a woman, and he disagreed with that. He was then asked if he recalled what she said that you came on to her. She tried to persuade you not to do it because you were all known to each other. What do you say to that? And he said, lies. It's more lies. Then it was put to him in regards to the tampon. He said, you said in evidence there was none. Conor McGregor replied and said, there was none. I didn't see one. I didn't feel one. There was no tampon. Or if she was in her cycle, I would not have proceeded to have sex with the Nikita Hand. He was then asked, where did it come from? And he said, well, it wasn't there when I was there. And this is in relation to the tampon. It was then put to him, you're saying it got there after you had sex with her. And Conor McGregor replied, it must have been. Then it was put to him that her evidence was she wouldn't have sex with somebody while on her period. And he replied, yes. And likewise, it was then put to him that he wanted to, Mr. Gordon for Nikita Hand's legal team wanted to go back to the evening before. He said, you gave an outline to my friend who was the man driving. And this is a guy from a security team called Gazine. And when asked, was he driving? He said, yes, he was on the security team and he was driving. He said that they were on an 8-hour shift. So when he would finish, a new person would come on the shift. And at this point then, Mr. Gordon was looking for a statement that he wanted to cross-examine Mr. McGregor about. Mr. McGregor asked if he could take a toilet break. At this point, it was around 10 to 4.
A statement from the driver?
This is...
Or is it clear?
No, it's not clear what the statement was. He said, before I finish, the statement you read out. And then he said, wait, there's one part I forgot to mention in the next statement. So he went off to look for this next statement.
Okay.
McGregor wants a toilet break. It's 10 to 4 in the day. And the court decides
to finish
up
10
for
minutes
the day.
early.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So how long was he in?
So Conor McGregor went on the stand at 2:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finished for the day at 10 to 4.
An hour, 20 minutes.
Yes.
And you said at the beginning that he explained why he hadn't been in the court, or there was an explanation why he hadn't been in the court that morning. So
yes. So that
when you went in, he wasn't in his usual seat.
He wasn't there. When Mr. McGregor went on the stand, he explained that he hadn't been there in the morning because he had a stomach upset last night. And then earlier on in the day, at the beginning of the court day, the jury and the court was told that Conor McGregor wasn't present in court at that time, but it was their hope that he would be there later in the day.
Okay. Was his father in court?
His father was in court all day, yes.
And James Lawrence?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.